The story begins with an atmosphere of dread, towering walls, barbed wire curling like thorns against the sky, and guards standing at watchtowers as if a war zone lies inside. This is not a high-security prison for hardened criminals serving life sentences. This is Cook County Jail in Chicago, a place meant to be a temporary holding facility, a so-called waiting room for those awaiting trial. But what happens inside has earned it a far darker reputation. America's deadliest lockup. Every year, tens of thousands of people pass through these gates. Some are charged with petty crimes, others with violent offenses. But once they step inside, they all face the same reality. The jail is overcrowded to an unimaginable level, often holding over 5,000 inmates at a time, crammed into cells built for far fewer. Hallways echo with the sound of metal doors slamming shut, voices yelling, and sometimes the terrifying silence before violence erupts. For many viewers, jail might sound like a controlled environment, guards, cameras, and strict rules to keep everyone safe. But insiders reveal a different truth. Cook County Jail is chaos wrapped in concrete. Unlike prisons where long sentences create a kind of hierarchy, this jail is unstable. New inmates arrive daily, uncertain of their fate in court, and that uncertainty brews tension. Every person inside knows they could be stuck here for weeks, months, or even years before their trial is decided. It is a waiting game where survival becomes the top priority. Former inmates describe walking into the intake process, being stripped, searched, and handed a uniform, all while sizing up the others around them. Everyone is on edge. Some are terrified first-timers. Others are gang members used to the system, ready to stake their claim. The tension is immediate. The first night, you don't sleep, one ex-inmate confessed in an interview. You keep your eyes open because you don't know if the guy in the bunk above you is going to attack you in the dark. And attacks do happen, constantly. Reports detail violent assaults almost daily, with fights breaking out over stolen food trays, smuggled contraband, or even something as simple as a disrespectful glance. The overcrowding makes matters worse. Inmates are stacked together like sardines, leaving no room for privacy or peace. In this environment, fear becomes the air they breathe. But it's not just inmates clashing with one another. Guards themselves are often overwhelmed. With too few staff to control too many men, violence spirals out of control before they can even respond. Surveillance cameras capture brutal brawls lasting several minutes, unchecked until backup arrives. Some officers admit off record that they simply can't police every tier, every cell, every shadow of the massive complex. As one correctional officer once said, "It's like trying to hold back a flood with your bare hands." The jail's design doesn't help either. The sprawling complex is a maze of cell blocks, dormitories, and corridors, some of which are decades old. Poor lighting and blind spots make it easy for contraband to be passed, fights to erupt unnoticed, and intimidation to flourish. Inmates often describe the place as a pressure cooker, one spark away from an explosion. Yet perhaps the most shocking truth about Cook County Jail is who ends up inside. Because this is a pre-trial facility, many inmates have not been convicted of a crime at all. They are legally innocent until proven guilty, but poverty keeps them trapped here. If you can't afford bail, even for minor charges, you could spend months locked up, surrounded by hardened criminals, before you ever see a judge. For some, this waiting period becomes a death sentence before their trial even begins. Families outside wait for updates, imagining their loved ones simply sitting in a cell, but the reality is far more brutal. Inside, those same loved ones may be fighting daily just to stay alive. The jail doesn't just hold people, it grinds them down. Fear, violence, overcrowding, and neglect turn this so-called waiting room into a place that scars everyone who passes through it. This is the shocking beginning of Cook County Jail's story. A facility designed to hold the accused, but notorious for breaking the human spirit before justice is ever served. And this is only the surface. What happens in daily life inside these walls is far worse than most could imagine. Life inside Cook County Jail is a brutal contradiction. Official reports describe a controlled environment where order is maintained and inmates are monitored at all times. But those who've lived or worked within the walls reveal a different reality, one where overcrowding, tension, and violence dominate every moment of daily life. From the moment the sun rises, the chaos begins. Inmates wake to the clanging of cell doors and the shouting of guards moving them through the routine. Breakfast is often rushed, with trays of bland food distributed to hundreds of men at once. But even something as simple as a meal becomes a flashpoint. Fights break out in the line, food is stolen, and weaker inmates often go hungry because stronger ones take what they want. Correctional officers know the danger is highest during these movements, when large groups of men gather together and tempers flare. Overcrowding is the jail's most pressing problem, and it touches every part of daily life. Cells designed for 2 often hold 3 or 4. Dormitories overflow with bunks so close together that inmates can reach out and touch each other. Privacy doesn't exist, and neither does peace. In this kind of environment, even a small disagreement, a misplaced stare, a loud snore, a bump in the hallway can trigger violence. Insiders describe constant fights erupting in the housing units, some over trivial things, others sparked by deeper gang rivalries. To outsiders, jail time might sound like boredom and routine, but boredom inside Cook County is dangerous. With little to do and nowhere to go, inmates become restless. Some form cliques for protection, others gamble with homemade dice or cards, and many turn to smuggling contraband as a way to escape reality. Cell phones, drugs, and even weapons somehow find their way inside, escalating tensions and making daily life more volatile. Guards are tasked with keeping order, but they are often outnumbered and overwhelmed. On some tiers, a single officer is responsible for watching over more than 50 inmates. When violence breaks out, that officer may have to wait for backup before intervening, leaving fights to rage unchecked. In rare cases, staff admit that they purposely avoid stepping in too soon, knowing it could put their own lives at risk. As one former officer put it, "You pick your battles, because in there, if you step into the wrong fight, you might not walk out." Medical care is another critical concern. With overcrowding and constant conflict, injuries are frequent. But getting timely medical attention inside the jail can be nearly impossible. Inmates often report waiting hours or even days for basic treatment. Those with chronic illnesses like diabetes or asthma are sometimes left untreated until their conditions become life-threatening. And for the mentally ill, Cook County Jail has been described as the nation's largest mental health facility by default, since so many inmates with psychiatric issues are funneled into the system rather than hospitals. Yet the care they receive is often inadequate, leaving them vulnerable to abuse or neglect. Daily life isn't just about physical survival, it's psychological as well. Inmates live under constant stress, knowing that at any moment, violence could erupt around them. The sound of fights, screams, or alarms becomes a regular backdrop. Sleep is broken by noise, fear, and the ever-present threat of attack. For first-time offenders, the shock can be overwhelming. Some withdraw into themselves, barely speaking, while others adapt by becoming harder, colder, and more aggressive. In Cook County Jail, showing weakness can make you a target, so inmates quickly learn to mask their fear behind a tough exterior. But beyond the walls, families often remain unaware of this harsh reality. They imagine their loved ones waiting quietly for trial, perhaps bored, but safe. They don't see the fights in the chow hall, the intimidation in the showers, or the bruises and scars left by nightly brawls. They don't hear the whispered threats that echo across crowded dorms. They don't know that every day inside Cook County Jail feels like walking a tightrope, where one wrong step could mean disaster. This is the cruel paradox of daily life here. A place that is meant to hold people temporarily becomes a world that changes them forever. For many, Cook County Jail is not just a waiting room. It is a training ground for violence, a place where survival instincts sharpen, and where even those who entered innocent can leave hardened. The routine may appear structured on paper, but in reality, each day is unpredictable, unstable, and dangerous. And while fights over food or bunks are common, the real battles lie deeper, in the invisible network of power and control run by gangs inside the jail. That power dictates who eats, who sleeps safely, and who becomes a victim. To understand the true heart of Cook County Jail, one must first understand the gangs that dominate. Power inside Cook County Jail doesn't belong to the guards, at least not fully. The real control often rests in the hands of gangs, groups that dominate life behind the bars and turn the jail into a battleground. To understand why this facility has become one of America's deadliest lockups, you must first understand the role gangs play inside. Chicago has long been a city defined by gang rivalries, and those rivalries don't disappear when members are arrested. They intensify. Once inside Cook County Jail, the same divisions that fuel violence on the streets are transplanted into the tiers and dormitories. Every hallway, every corner, every day room becomes claimed territory. Former inmates describe a harsh reality. When you arrive, you can't remain neutral for long. Newcomers are often pressured or forced to align with a group. Refusing to do so can make you an easy target. One ex-inmate put it bluntly, "If you don't pick a side, you don't last." Someone will test you. These tests can range from intimidation and beatings to outright assaults. For those who try to avoid affiliation, the jail becomes even more dangerous. Gangs run a shadow economy inside. They control the flow of contraband, drugs, cigarettes, cell phones, and even food items smuggled from the kitchen. The trade doesn't just enrich them, it gives them power. Inmates who owe debts are often beaten or extorted, and in some cases, they're forced into violent tasks as repayment. Officers know this underground system exists, but stamping it out is nearly impossible. When one smuggling route is shut down, another opens. This economy creates hierarchy. Higher-ranking gang members call the shots, while lower-level members carry out orders. That might mean organizing an attack on a rival, collecting payments, or intimidating weaker inmates. Inside the walls of Cook County Jail, violence is currency, and respect is enforced with fists and blades. Gang rivalries are also the root of many riots and mass brawls. When two groups clash, it doesn't take long for entire tiers to erupt into chaos. Videos leaked from inside have shown dozens of men fighting at once, guards scrambling to respond, and hallways littered with makeshift weapons. Even routine movements, such as transferring inmates from one area to another, can become flashpoints if rival members cross paths. What makes the situation even more disturbing is that gang influence sometimes extends beyond inmates themselves. There are documented cases where corrupt officers smuggle in contraband for gangs, turning a blind eye in exchange for money or favors. This corruption allows gangs to strengthen their grip and undermines the fragile balance of order. When the people tasked with maintaining control contribute to the problem, the jail becomes even more unstable. For first-time offenders or nonviolent inmates, this environment is devastating. Imagine being arrested for a minor charge, unable to afford bail, and suddenly finding yourself in a dorm dominated by gang members. You're told to pay rent for your bunk or risk being attacked. You're ordered to carry messages, hide contraband, or fight someone as a show of loyalty. Many are dragged into violence they never wanted to be part of. By the time they leave, they are scarred, physically, emotionally, and sometimes permanently tied to the very gangs they tried to avoid. It's not just men who are affected. Women's divisions in Cook County Jail also experience gang presence, though it operates differently. Control still exists, intimidation is still real, and contraband still flows. The influence stretches across the entire jail complex, regardless of gender or age. The most chilling part is how organized it all is. Gangs inside Cook County don't just act spontaneously, they strategize. Leaders on the inside communicate with those on the outside, coordinating operations like a military unit. Orders are passed through coded messages, smuggled phones, or even during court appearances. The jail becomes less of a holding facility and more of a headquarters for ongoing street wars. For guards and administrators, this reality is nearly impossible to dismantle. Cracking down on gangs means confronting an enemy that is larger, more organized, and more ruthless than any one officer could manage. And so the cycle continues. Inmates arrive, gangs recruit them, violence spreads, and the reputation of Cook County Jail as America's deadliest lockup grows stronger. Inside these walls, survival isn't just about avoiding fights. It's about navigating a system where gangs dictate who thrives and who suffers. It's about understanding that the greatest danger doesn't always come from chaos, but from the structured, ruthless power that gangs wield over every moment of daily life. And while gangs are the visible force, there's another hidden layer of danger inside Cook County Jail: corruption and abuse within the very system meant to enforce order. The next chapter reveals how negligence, brutality, and exploitation from the authorities themselves make this lockup even deadlier. If gangs hold one kind of power inside Cook County Jail, the system itself holds another. But what happens when the system, the very guards and administrators tasked with enforcing order, becomes part of the problem? For many who have lived or worked inside, corruption, abuse, and neglect are as much a threat as inmate violence. On paper, Cook County Jail has strict rules, clear responsibilities, and oversight from multiple agencies. But in reality, the cracks run deep. Inmates describe guards who pick favorites, turn blind eyes, or in some cases, directly profit from the chaos. Contraband doesn't just appear out of thin air, it comes through smuggling, and often, staff are involved. Reports and investigations over the years have revealed cases where officers were caught sneaking in drugs, cigarettes, and even weapons in exchange for cash. Some smuggled phones that allowed gang leaders to continue running operations from behind bars. Every deal made in the shadows undermines the fragile sense of control inside the jail. But corruption isn't just about contraband, it's also about neglect. Overcrowding and underfunding create conditions where officers are stretched thin. Instead of maintaining safety, some guards adopt a don't see, don't care approach. Fights break out, and guards may wait before intervening, either because they're outnumbered or because they don't want to risk themselves. For the inmates caught in the middle, this means beatings can go unchecked, and in some cases, lives are lost. Excessive force is another dark reality. Cook County Jail has faced lawsuits and federal scrutiny for the way officers handle inmates. Accounts describe prisoners being beaten while handcuffed, thrown into isolation cells without medical care, or denied basic necessities as punishment. Some guards use intimidation as a tool, knowing that fear keeps inmates quiet. For those inside, the line between punishment and abuse is often blurred. Then there's medical neglect, one of the most damning aspects of life inside. Inmates with chronic illnesses frequently report being denied medication or receiving it hours late. Some suffer in silence as conditions worsen. Mental health care, in particular, is woefully inadequate. Cook County Jail has been called the largest de facto mental health institution in America, because so many inmates with psychiatric issues end up here instead of hospitals. Yet instead of treatment, they often face isolation or punishment. Stories abound of inmates experiencing breakdowns and being left to deteriorate alone in their cells. The combination of untreated mental illness and violent surroundings creates a volatile mix that endangers everyone. The corruption and neglect aren't invisible to the outside world. Families of inmates often file complaints, advocacy groups protest, and journalists expose scandal after scandal. Yet, meaningful change has been slow. Each new lawsuit reveals another layer of dysfunction. Guards accused of brutality, deaths from medical neglect, smuggling rings uncovered, oversight ignored. Every revelation adds to the jail's grim reputation. For the inmates living through it, however, it's not just a headline, it's daily life. Imagine being locked in a cell, calling for medical help that never comes. Imagine watching officers walk past while another inmate beats someone in the corner. Imagine knowing that the very people who are supposed to protect you might be the ones enabling your suffering. This is the reality described by countless men and women who've passed through Cook County's walls. What makes it even more tragic is that many inside are still legally innocent, awaiting trial. They have not been convicted, but they endure conditions that break them down physically and mentally. Families outside might believe their loved one is safe while just waiting for court, but the truth is that some never make it out alive. Negligence becomes a silent killer, just as dangerous as the gangs that dominate the tiers. The system's failures raise haunting questions. Is Cook County Jail meant to rehabilitate or simply to contain? Is it truly about justice or about control and profit? The stories of corruption and abuse suggest that this jail is less about protecting society and more about sustaining a broken cycle. And yet, even after corruption, gangs, and daily violence, there remains one final layer to this story. The deeper truth that Cook County Jail, America's most dangerous waiting room, is more than just a holding facility. For many, it is the deadliest chapter of their lives, one that leaves scars long after they leave. Cook County Jail is officially described as a temporary holding facility, a place where inmates wait for their day in court. But for many, it becomes far more than that. It is the deadliest chapter of their lives. The irony is chilling. Some who enter this jail for minor offenses, or even those who are later proven innocent, leave with lasting scars, or never leave at all. The jail's reputation as a waiting room hides the reality of what actually happens inside. This is not just a stopover on the way to trial. It's a place where survival becomes the only focus. The overcrowding, the gang dominance, the corruption, the neglect. Together, they transform Cook County Jail into something darker than anyone on the outside wants to believe. For families, the truth is heartbreaking. Mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters wait at home, imagining their loved one in a cell, perhaps uncomfortable but safe. They believe that while court dates are pending, nothing too terrible could happen. Yet behind the walls, those same loved ones may be enduring relentless violence, abuse, or untreated illness. The contrast between outside perception and inside reality is perhaps the most haunting part of all. Statistics tell a grim story. Each year, inmates die inside Cook County Jail, from assaults, from medical neglect, from suicide. Many more leave with injuries that will never fully heal, and countless others leave with invisible scars, trauma, fear, and distrust that shape the rest of their lives. For some, the jail is a place where they harden into criminals, learning to fight, to affiliate with gangs, to adopt the survival tactics necessary to endure. In this way, the jail doesn't just house crime, it breeds it. Advocates argue that Cook County Jail reflects the failures of the American justice system as a whole. It is meant to uphold the principle of innocent until proven guilty. Yet in practice, it punishes people before they've even had a trial. Those who cannot afford bail suffer the most. Wealthier defendants pay their way out and wait for court at home. The poor, meanwhile, wait inside one of the most dangerous facilities in the country, exposed to violence and abuse simply because of their financial status. Justice in this system has a price tag. The jail also raises questions about humanity itself. What does it say about society when a place designed as a temporary holding room becomes deadlier than some prisons? What does it say when the mentally ill are warehoused in cells instead of treated in hospitals, when guards become predators instead of protectors, and when the innocent suffer the same fate as the guilty? These are questions the outside world rarely asks, but for those who have lived inside, They define their entire existence. Former inmates often describe the moment they walk out as surreal. Freedom feels unreal, like stepping from one world into another. But they also describe a haunting truth. Cook County Jail never really leaves you. The sounds, the smells, the fear, it all stays. Some wake up in the middle of the night, still expecting to hear cell doors slamming or fights erupting. Others carry paranoia, unable to trust people, even years later. The jail becomes a ghost that follows them, shaping the rest of their lives. For those who never leave, the story ends differently. Families receive calls no one ever wants to hear. A son beaten in a fight. A daughter who took her own life. A father who died waiting for medical care. Their stories are buried under statistics, one more number in a system that fails again and again. And so, Cook County Jail remains America's most dangerous waiting room, not because of what it was built to be, but because of what it has become. A place where fear rules, where gangs control, where corruption festers, and where lives are shattered long before a judge makes a ruling. As viewers, we're left with one haunting thought. If this is the reality of a jail, a place meant only to hold people temporarily, then what horrors lie inside the prisons that follow? Cook County Jail is more than a holding facility. It is a mirror reflecting the darkest truths about America's justice system. That waiting for trial can sometimes be more dangerous than serving a sentence, and that behind those towering walls, justice is often the last thing to be found.